Hello and welcome to this video. In this video we will talk about idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura or ITP. ITP is an immune-mediated disease in which autoantibodies are formed against platelets. These antibodies are most often directed against glycoprotein 2b3a on platelet membranes. These antibodies sensitize the platelets, resulting in their premature removal from the circulation by reticuloendothelial system cells. ITP can either occur in isolation or sometimes it may be associated with an underlying immune dysregulation caused by conditions such as connective tissue diseases like SLE, HIV infection, B-cell malignancies, pregnancy, and certain drug therapies. However, whatever is the cause of ITP, the clinical presentation and pathogenesis are similar. Coming on to clinical features. In children, it usually occurs acutely and occurs 2 weeks after a viral infection. In them, ITP occurs with sudden self-limiting purpura. In adults, on the other hand, ITP more commonly affects female and may have an insidious onset. Moreover, in adults the disease runs usually a chronic remitting and relapsing course. Unlike ITP in children, where there is a preceding history of viral infection, in adults there is usually no viral infection before the development of ITP. The presentation of ITP depends on the degree of thrombocytopenia. Many cases with counts of more than 50,000 are discovered by chance on investigations done for some other reason, like annual health checkup for example. And spontaneous mucosal bleeding typically occurs only when platelet count is below 20,000. At higher counts than this, the patient may complain of easy bruising, sometimes epistaxis, or in a female patient, she may present with menorrhagia. If ITP is secondary to some other disorder like connective tissue disease, symptoms or signs of connective tissue disease may be apparent at presentation or emerge several years later. It shall be noted that there is no splenomegaly in ITP. Coming on to investigations, complete blood count will show thrombocytopenia. The peripheral blood film is normal apart from a greatly reduced platelet numbers. Antiplatelet autoantibodies, if tested, are often present. Bone marrow biopsy is usually not necessary for the diagnosis, but if done, it reveals an obvious increase in megakaryocytes. Patients aged over 65 years should, however, be considered for a bone marrow examination to look for an accompanying B-cell malignancy. Appropriate autoantibody testing should be performed if a diagnosis of connective tissue disease is likely. HIV testing should also be considered because a positive result will have major implications for appropriate therapy. Management of ITP. Many patients with stable compensated ITP and a platelet count of more than 30,000 does not require treatment to raise the platelet count, except at the time of increasing bleeding risk, such as undergoing surgery and biopsy. For the patients with spontaneous bleeding or if platelets are less than 20,000, first-line therapy is with high doses of glucocorticoids, either prednisolone in a dose of 1 mg per kg per day or dexamethasone 40 mg per day for 4 days. Pulsed methylprednisolone may also be used in severe cases. Glucocorticoids suppresses antibody production and also inhibit phagocytosis of sensitized platelets by reticuloendothelial cells. The aim of treatment is to keep platelet counts above 30,000 and reduce the dose of steroids after remission. Intravenous immunoglobulins or IVIG, they raise the platelet count by blocking antibody receptors on reticuloendothelial cells and thus raise platelet counts by inhibiting their clearance by these phagocytic cells. IVIG is combined with glucocorticoid therapy if there is evidence of significant mucosal bleeding or if there is a slow response to glucocorticoids alone. Platelet transfusions are generally not used except during life-threatening hemorrhage or during splenectomy. Why they are not used? Because they are quickly destroyed by autoantibodies. As mentioned before, ITP may become chronic in adults with remissions and relapses should be treated by reintroducing glucocorticoids. For using second-line therapies, if a patient has 2 relapses or have a primary refractory disease, second-line therapies are considered. The options for second-line therapy include immunosuppression, splenectomy, and thrombopoietin receptor agonists. The order in which therapies should be used is not entirely clear. Low-dose glucocorticoid therapy and immunosuppressants such as rituximab, cyclosporin, mycophenolate, and tacrolimus may produce remissions and reduce relapses. Splenectomy produces complete remission in about 70% of patients, and improvement in the disease also occurs in 20 to 25% of favorable cases. Where splenectomy is considered, the precautions need to be in place, and we will come to these precautions in a while. Next are the thrombopoietin receptor agonists. These are reserved for refractory cases of ITP. Thrombopoietin receptor agonists include eltrombopag, which is an oral thrombopoietin receptor agonist, and romiplostim, which is an injectable thrombopoietin analog. They induce response in around 75% of cases, usually within 10 to 14 days. Now coming on to the precautions which need to be in place for patients undergoing splenectomy. One by one these are: vaccinate with pneumococcal Haemophilus influenzae type B, meningococcal group C, and influenza vaccines at least 2 to 3 weeks before elective splenectomy. Vaccination should be given after emergency surgery but may be less effective. Pneumococcal re-immunization should be given at least 5 yearly and influenza annually. Vaccination status must be documented. Lifelong prophylactic penicillin B in a dose of 500 mg twice daily is recommended. In penicillin allergic patients, consider a macrolide. Patients should be educated regarding the risks of infection and methods of prophylaxis. A card or bracelet alert should be carried to alert health professionals to the risk of overwhelming sepsis. In sepsis, patients should be resuscitated and given IV antibiotics to cover pneumococcus, Haemophilus, and meningococcus, according to the local resistance patterns. The risk of cerebral malaria is increased in the event of infection. Animal bites should be promptly treated with local disinfection and antibiotics to prevent serious soft tissue infection and sepsis. And that's all for this video. I hope you have learned something useful in this video. If so, please like this video, share with your colleagues, and subscribe to this channel.